Let's be real. Creating amazing content for your website is only half the job. There's this foundational piece that can either launch you to the top of the search rankings or just, silently kill all your hard work. Today, we're talking about that foundation. We're going to build the blueprint for success, your website's architecture. Sound familiar? This question is probably one of the biggest frustrations out there. You pour your heart and soul, hours of work, into incredible, valuable content, and then crickets. It gets basically no visibility. It's maddening, right? Well, the answer usually isn't about the content itself.
And this quote, it just hits the nail on the head. Your brilliant articles, your amazing pages, they might be buried alive by a messy, confusing website structure. This is that silent ranking killer we really need to talk about.
So let's officially put this thing under the microscope. In this first part of our explainer, we're going to unpack what website architecture actually is and why it has so much power, for good or for bad.
At its core, it's a pretty simple idea. Website architecture is just how your pages are structured and how they're all connected to each other. Think of it like the floor plan for your house. It shows how all the rooms fit together and, most importantly, how people and search engines can find their way around.
And here's the thing. Your website's architecture is doing two jobs at once. For your visitors, the humans, it's a simple roadmap. It helps them find what they're looking for fast. But for a search engine like Google, it's more like a technical blueprint that explains what your site is all about, how different ideas connect, and which pages are the most important. You've got to make both of them happy.
Okay, so let's see how this all comes together to become that blueprint for Google. Because when you get your structure right, you're not just organizing stuff, you're basically handing Google a guide to your website.
So you might be thinking, with all this talk about AI and content, does this technical stuff still even matter? Oh yeah. The answer is a huge, definitive yes. In fact, you could argue it matters now more than it ever has.
And here's why. Google's gotten way smarter. It doesn't just scan a page for keywords anymore. It analyzes the relationships between all the pages across your entire site to get the big picture. A solid structure also stops something called keyword cannibalization. That's a fancy way of saying your own pages are accidentally fighting each other for the same search terms, which just confuses Google and hurts everyone's rankings.
All right, so if we're going to build a solid foundation, we need to know what holds it up, right? There are really four main pillars you need to get right.
These are the big four. First up, crawlability. Basically, can Google even find all your pages? Second, content clustering. Are you grouping your related articles together in a way that makes sense? Third is click depth. How many clicks does it take to get to your really important stuff? And finally, URL structure. Are your web addresses clean and easy to read, or just a jumble of numbers? Let's just focus on click depth for a second, because it's a huge deal. Here's the key takeaway. Any page that's buried 5 or 6 clicks deep from your homepage, Google sees that and thinks, this probably isn't that important. So they rarely rank well. The ideal structure is what we call flat. Anyone or any search engine should be able to get to any important page in 3 clicks or less.
Okay, enough of the theory. Let's get into the practical, hands-on stuff. We're going to walk through a super clear 6-step action plan you can use to build a website architecture that's actually built to rank.
Here it is. This is your checklist for getting structure smart. We're going to cover all 6 of these, using smart internal links, building that flat architecture we just talked about, creating clear navigation, fixing your URLs, using breadcrumbs, and setting up sitemaps. Let's dive in with what is absolutely the backbone of it all.
Internal links are so much more than just, blue clickable text. They're like the circulatory system for your whole website. They pass authority, or what some people call link juice, from one page to another. They tell Google how your content is all related, and they literally create pathways that guide search crawlers through your site. The key is to make sure the links are relevant. Link pages together that actually make sense together.
And there's that magic number again, 3. This is the famous 3-click rule. It is the golden rule of a flat architecture. Your one goal should be making sure that no important page on your site is more than 3 clicks away from your homepage. It just makes for a better user experience and makes it way easier for Google to find and index everything you've published.
This is such an easy fix, but it makes a huge difference. Just look at the two. The bad URL is just a meaningless string of characters. It tells you nothing. A good URL is clean, descriptive, and even uses keywords. It immediately builds trust with the user and helps you rank. It's a no-brainer. And that exact same logic applies to your main navigation menu. Using a generic word like services, that is a huge missed opportunity. If you use a descriptive, keyword-rich label like SEO web design, you're telling both users and Google exactly what they're going to find. Your navigation stops being just a design choice and becomes a real SEO asset that actively helps you.
And what about sitemaps? Do they still matter? Absolutely. Here's the simplest way to think about it. An XML sitemap is a roadmap you submit directly to Google to make sure their crawlers don't miss any of your pages. An HTML sitemap is more like a table of contents for your human visitors, to help them find their way around. For a complete strategy, you really want to have both.
Okay, let's pull all this together. Fixing your site architecture isn't just some small, technical SEO task you check off a list. It's a fundamental strategy for growth that really impacts your entire presence online. When you build that strong foundation, you get real, tangible results for your business. You'll see higher rankings, plain and simple, because Google finally understands your site. You'll give people a better user experience, which means they'll stick around longer. And you create a framework that lets you keep adding content without the whole thing collapsing, which means scalable, long-term growth.
And let's not forget about the user in all of this. A logical structure just makes a website feel intuitive and easy to use. It cuts down on frustration, and it keeps people on your site. In fact, multiple studies have shown that easy navigation is one of the biggest factors in whether or not a person actually trusts a website.
I think this quote just sums up everything we've talked about perfectly. Look, having great content is the ticket to entry. It's the minimum requirement, but it's not enough anymore. The websites that are really winning today are the ones that pair that great content with an intelligent, friendly, and search engine optimized structure.
And so that brings us to the final, really important question you need to ask yourself. You've already done the hard part. You've created amazing content. Now you need to take a good, hard look at your site. Is its structure acting like a spotlight, showcasing all your hard work for the world to find? Or is it more like a locked basement, hiding all your best stuff away from both your users and Google? The answer to that question could change absolutely everything.